the intersection of AI and blockchain technology. So if it weren't enough that we're already navigating through this difficult world that is crypto and this brand new technology, we're also introducing AI into the mix, which is nothing new, but the mixture of the two could be quite explosive. And actually, we might even touch on how to regulate AI or possible regulations for AI in the future, which is pretty crazy because some things have been coming out about the deep fakes that people have actually believed and have started this whole chaos and pandemonium. So I think what's similar, and I did an event recently with Gary Vee in Dubai, and he was discussing about how technology is always demonized in the beginning. And there's a lot of fear, and there's a lot of speculation about what could happen and why it may not be the best for society. But I believe we need to enhance the good parts of that, continue to have these conversations, and that this is going to completely transform and elevate our society and not replace the human element, but add greatly to it. So in the next debate, we are going to discuss, is it a match made in tech or not? Harnessing the power of blockchain and AI together. So I will introduce the speakers now for this panel. We've got Lex, Chief Economist Officer of Consensys, Marieke, CEO of the NEAR Foundation, Ken, Head of Cronos Labs, and the moderator, Teemu, co-founder and COO at TradingStrategy.ai. Please welcome them to the stage with a warm round of applause.
All right, hello everyone. How are you doing? Great, wonderful. I hope you are enjoying yourselves and the conference over here. So I'm Teemu. I'm co-founder of TradingStrategy.ai, and really wonderful to be here to talk about the two hot topics of today, blockchain and AI, and how they are intersecting. And as I traveled from London to Paris yesterday, I came by flying, and I was checking around in the busy airport, and I saw a bunch of people sitting nearby me using ChatGPT and some other solutions to discover information about their travel destinations, making travel plans and all that. And some people were doing some graphical design, and based on what I understood, they were using some AI solutions. It's just amazing to see how these AI systems have spread so quickly around the world now in the past few months. And for me personally, these two areas are very close to my heart. So I've been in the blockchain markets for over 7 years already, doing all kinds of solutions and businesses. And currently at TradingStrategy.ai, we are providing algorithmic trading protocol for decentralized markets. And the protocol executes all trading directly on DEXs and DeFi protocols. And this non-custodial solution that we have introduced and brought to the market, it enables traders and kind of quants to bring their Python-based solutions, algorithms, directly to the on-chain markets and the DeFi environment. So as we are talking about the Python-based technology, the AI enablers will also be part of our offering as we go forward. So you will be able to use different kind of AI engines, kind of depending on your needs. But from this point of view, we are providing the connection point between these two different technology environments overall. But when it comes to this panel discussion, and you can think about the generic benefits of using AI in the blockchain context. So of course there's the very obvious ones like productivity benefits. So how do you produce code? So maybe you can use already some AI tools to write your code quicker, or you can use AI solutions for different kind of admin tasks. But we don't want to focus on those generic value propositions in this panel discussion, but let's dig a little bit deeper into the intersection part of it. So welcoming the wonderful panelists here. So please go ahead and introduce yourselves quickly, and let's start from Ken.
Yeah, thanks, Teemu. Hi, my name is Ken. So I lead Cronos Labs, which is the ecosystem development arm of Cronos Chain. Cronos Chain is a layer 1 blockchain. It's the 10th largest blockchain by total value locked. And it's a project, it's an open source project that was developed in partnership with crypto.com, and that partnership endures in the sense that it's a chain that now has access to 80 million customers that crypto.com has around the world. So I'm coming into this panel from the standpoint of someone who's running an accelerator and an ecosystem development fund, and of course, where we have an investment thesis and we are looking at lots of startups that could enrich our ecosystem with innovation.
Hi, Marieke Flament. I'm the CEO of the NEAR Foundation. NEAR is a layer 1 protocol, which is fully sharded, proof of stake. NEAR actually origin story is in AI, and the name comes from near because singularity is near. Our co-founders have background in AI. As a foundation, the role we have is to help foster the growth of a self-sustainable ecosystem, and to basically help also raise awareness on NEAR, its technology, and what is possible to do, while also continuing to help further decentralization of the ecosystem. And so I come into this panel with a very interesting perspective, or interesting also to hear what other fellow panelists will have to share. But what is the interconnection between blockchain and AI, and what are actually the use cases that we see actually coming from NEAR, but also that we see actually rising up and continuously growing?
So it's interesting to me that the singularity is near, but we're still early. No? Nobody likes that? It's good, thank you, yes.
You're the CEO of the Early Foundation.
Yes. I want to announce the launch of the Early Protocol. It's an exclusive. My name's Lex. I'm the chief economist at Consensys. Consensys is a blockchain software company that's trying to power up Web3, helping people use Web3 through MetaMask, a crypto wallet, and then helping developers build on Web3 across a number of protocols, including Ethereum and others. I focus, or most recently focus, on crypto economics, token engineering, kind of systems design, and I think the rise of generative AI in particular is really challenging to some of the assumptions that people in Web3 have, and so I'm really excited to open up the topic.
Excellent, thank you. Great to have you all on the panel. And so let's go right into the topic. So as leaders in your companies, what are the potential synergies that you see between the blockchain and AI? So basically, how could the collaboration between these two powerful technologies lead to improvements in blockchains or the applications built on them when it comes to DeFi, NFTs, DAOs, or metaverse, or whatever it is that's built on it? So what kind of views you have on that?
Okay, I'll start quickly. So our investment thesis with respect to AI and blockchain is really structured around 4 themes. One is AI as a tool for productivity. Number 2 is AI to enable way better UX and UI. Number 3 is AI as an enabler of decentralized identity. And number 4 is blockchain as an enabler of the AI economy. Now, so we're going to talk about all of that today, but I first want to be a bit of a contrarian and object to something that you said earlier, Teemu, when you said, oh, we don't care about ChatGPT and tools for productivity. And I think at a very strategic level, we do care. When you look at the DeFi industry and you look at its productivity, in terms of millions of dollars managed by headcount, the traditional banks are like at 15 million dollars per person. And DeFi protocols are between 50 and 300, right? So in a way, DeFi has started to deliver on this promise that we're reinventing the finance infrastructure in a way that is way more productive than what TradFi is able to do. However, when you look at BlackRock and asset managers, they are at 400 plus, right? $400 million per headcount. So there are already TradFi companies that are way more productive than DeFi, and this is only going to get worse as we have more regulation imposed on DeFi protocols. So I think it's actually a strategic imperative for all blockchain companies to incorporate AI productivity tools at every level, so programming, marketing, design, etc., so that they're able to deliver on that promise. Otherwise, they won't be able to do anything better than TradFi companies. And then I'll just touch briefly on the three other themes, right? So with respect to UX UI, we're very interested in chatbots, in particular the kind of like chatbots that Crypto.com has launched recently as part of their customer service and their website. In terms of AI enabling decentralized identity, where I think, generally speaking, we're seeing a proliferation of bots and Sybil attacks on all the protocols and products that exist in our network. So we're really looking at startups who are able to enable decentralized identity and investing in those. And finally, with respect to blockchain enabling the AI economy, here I'm talking about companies like Fetch AI, SingularityNet, Deep Brain Chain, with the idea that people can buy compute capacity or models from each other. And here blockchain can help to power that economy, particularly in a context where heavy regulation is going to be imposed on AI. People are going to be overwhelmed with lawsuits for IP and everything. And so decentralization will be one of the ways that they can work around those crippling regulations.
Yeah, thank you, Ken. Yeah, and I do agree with the productivity aspect as well, but just try to narrow down the topics here a little bit. Well done.
Yeah, I think productivity, actually, you're right, cannot be erased. So NEAR, for example, is focused on usability for developers and for end users. And one of the things we've been doing on our journey is evolving from a layer one to what we call a blockchain operating system, and enabling, in particular, decentralization of front end. But right now, for example, if you go on near.org, you can actually create or duplicate very easily widgets, and so have really these Lego blocks of how you can create the next application that you want to have. Now, add on that, for example, AI, then you can actually power that and go even faster. Building on what Ken was mentioning, actually, there are 4 areas that we see that are, we think, very interesting. One is actually authentication. So with the rise of AI and the rise of content being created, we are, I don't know, weeks or months or away from actually the internet being completely flooded and us being unable to know what is actually true and what is the origin of content and where does that come from. Well, I don't know yet what the solution is, but it could be interesting to have authentication that is actually then on blockchain, tamper-proof, so we exactly know origin, but also time when that was done. So that's one that is interesting. Data labeling, which is actually the core of AI to feed basically very large models, data labeling is still a human task. And actually being able to say, is this sign, what is it number or whatnot, that is actually what feeds. And in data labeling, being able to do micropayments and actually microtransaction is fundamental. And so that's also another interesting case. We had that on NEAR with NEAR Task, but we see that actually as something that would eventually rise. To the point on decentralization, today a lot of actually what we see with AI, and we talk a lot about ChatGPT, OpenAI is open in name, but it's actually very close. And so how do we actually decentralize GPU, but also how do we actually decentralize access and creation of data sets? Extremely important. And I would say the last one, which was a major bottleneck when in particular the market was crazy, but is authentication of code. So last year we couldn't provide enough security audits to projects that were building on NEAR, and you need to have that auditing trail. Well, that's probably one area where actually having that authentication is going to be really interesting. So those are 4 areas that we see could be very interesting. In addition to, I think the productivity angle cannot be, erased, because today, without knowing how to create nice designs or without knowing how to code, you can actually launch collections of something on blockchain. So the barriers to entry are just completely smashed down and lowered for that.
Thank you. Lex, please.
I feel an immense pressure to come up with a list of 4 things. But it's impossible because there are only 8. And so now it's awkward for me. So I think that the use cases that have been brought up are all really interesting and quite actionable, right? Like things you can do today. You can use the ChatGPT distribution, build a plugin, and be in there today and fight over a future platform. I think there's a number of kind of tactical things to do. So there's also an open source versus closed source tension in LLMs and then in the image models. And so, Stability and Facebook have open sourced their models, and that is kind of pitted against centralized information processing. So is there a way for the Web3 space to collaborate with the open source part of the AI industry? And so I think there are different paths where kind of tribes can find cultural alignment in both spaces, but it's difficult since the skill sets are quite different. The backgrounds that people have are different. And often AI people think, crypto is a pyramid scheme, and the crypto people think all the AI people work for some national government trying to collect our eyeballs and report us to the CIA, which is probably true, but you don't know. So I like it. It's just for you. The whole joke is just your. Okay, so I think what's helpful, though, is a more macro framing. And the way I think about it is that generative AI in particular, as made really popular by OpenAI today, is the extreme. It's the asymptote infinity version of Web 2.0, right? So if the premise of Web 2 is you have endless content to make you happy and it's for free, right? The attention economy, the dopamine hits, all of this stuff. And you pay nothing for it, but you're the product. AI is built on that because the data from that attention economy has been, that data exhaust is what the robots are made from. That's what they eat. They eat your attention. And then they now endlessly can generate hyper-personalized tendrils of information that makes you, satisfied and happy. So if we let AI as it is accrue in the Googles and Microsofts and Facebooks, what you get is the absolute extreme version of the problems of Web 2, where you are lost in this tragedy of the commons. So the dialectic, the reaction to that is Web 3. Web 3 is the answer to the problems of Web 2, which are now made even more acute, which is in Web 3, we're all custodying our own keys for our money, and we say things like, well, it's kind of weird for the banks to have my money. Like, why are they lending it out? Why is the government seizing them? That's a little strange. It's nice to not be intermediated from my financial assets. And what AI reveals to me is that actually, it's nice to not be intermediated on my information assets too. Like, if there's going to be a fully digital simulacra of me in terms of how I look, how I speak, my voice, my face, me as an avatar, which, by the way, comes pre-rendered in the Apple Vision Pro. That's a feature. It has a digital simulacra of you that's machine trained. Maybe I don't want somebody to custody that for me. And so I think we're going to see a lot of these sort of existential issues just become much louder, and I'm hoping that the solutions that Web3 has developed, like digital ownership of yourself and your stuff, your digital objects, becomes even more relevant as we're flooded with AI content.
Thank you, Lex. Very interesting points
You're
there
welcome.
as well. And so let's try to go a little bit deeper into these use cases, because all of you explained sort of the broader lines where your organizations are focused on, but let's try to give a very brief description of some kind of specific use case where you see that the integration of blockchain and AI within your own workspace, for example, or in your own company's sort of ecosystem has really brought some significant new innovation or something really interesting that you would like to highlight. So brief description, please.
Yeah, maybe.
Marieke.
So I mentioned it, but I'll re-mention it. So near task, for example, is actually crowdsource, and there is actually offices and buildings and full teams that exist on that, but people basically validating data sets that then actually are data set that can feed machine learning and models, right? So that's one very concrete example that we see today. We had last week also teams on Near that actually on Near protocol, Mint-based, which launched actually part of their hackathon, but it's now you can automatically create with ChatGPT, just having prompts to create like a picture of something and mint an NFT automatically. I'm not sure what the value of that yet fully is, but those things are becoming like easier and faster. So those are two live, very concrete examples that exist on Near.
Lex, please.
Sure. I don't know that examples from the 6 months of these things coexisting are really instructive for the future value, but so for example, MetaMask has a plugin system called Snaps where people can build stuff for it. One of the things that was built during hackathons is a conversational interface for your crypto assets. You can see other companies in the space have conversational interfaces for crypto assets. Whether or for equities or for other things, JP Morgan is building AI investment advisor, so that's going to be fantastic, of course. We'll buy more treasuries, long dated. No? I'm really kind of, am I okay? I'm like dragging it now. It's just getting worse. I think the more profound stuff, though, is when you take the really hard AI things and you settle it on chain, right? So AI is, it's the machine economy. It's the growth in GDP and productivity, exactly what Ken was saying about getting AUM or getting productivity or output up, getting labor up per person, and having that be machine intermediated, and then settling that value on machine systems rather than on closed source systems. And I think that is much more profound. Or similarly, the example of there are a number of companies now that are very highly funded in the AI space that are GPU cloud. So if you have 150 different LLMs or image generation models, and they're saved in some particular state, and then you're minting images out of it, let's say they're NFTs, how do you attach the data about what's the version of that model, what's the state of it, how do you go back to it, how do you get provenance? If there's 150 models, there's going to be 10,000 models in a year, there's going to be 1 million models in 3 years, right? So the complexity of taking that and then arranging it in a way that's actually friendly to a regular human being, I think that's what blockchain is for. And so I think, for me at least, that's more powerful than kind of, I'd say, the incremental productivity gains that any company is going to get from implementing some AI tools in their workflows.
Great. And then to finish, I would just mention, to answer the question, just a couple of examples from our ecosystem. And so indeed, the first one is conversational bots to help people understand DeFi and understand how to allocate their assets. So when we started Cronos, we started it, like I said, with Crypto.com, and with this idea that we would focus on the next billion Web3 users. But the reality is that right now, 90% of trading volume everywhere is bots, crypto funds, and degens. And so there's no real business rationale for focusing on the newbies. But I think that's a shame, and I think that there is a very, very strong need for means to explain to people who are not going to read the white paper how you're able to do leverage farming. So you put some USDC in a lending protocol, you get some tokens, you put those tokens in a liquidity pool, etc. And I think those, just understanding those basics, which can multiply your yield by a factor of 2 or 3, that's really essential. So Crypto.com has started with a conversational bot in the context of the centralized exchange, and we want to follow suit and do the same for all the dApps that we're incubating or accelerating. And then secondly, so we have this project that launched recently on Cronos. It's called Corgi AI, and right now it's doing an auto-generated NFTs just as a marketing hook. But the vision is that it's going to be kind of a marketplace for prompt engineers. And so the idea behind that is that, of course, you already have all kinds of Web2 marketplaces for AI, like Hugging Face and other models, but there's always going to be a need for like tail-end use cases for people who are in remote countries and have time to generate prompts or images on behalf of people who don't have time. And for those people who are kind of outside of the system or in a gray area legally, I think it's interesting for them to be able to have access to decentralized marketplaces. And so that's what this project is doing.
Thank you so much for that. And let's turn the story a little bit to something else. So I'm sure you have seen and heard stories about the terrible stories about the dangers of AI and those horror scenarios where humans become puppets of artificial intelligence and all that. So do you see some clear challenges or dangers in this intersection of blockchain and AI? And what do you think about what those dangers might be, and how are you prepared to take care of that kind of challenges?
I mean, for me, first of all, I think the technology is very rudimentary and nowhere near to like general intelligence. You have very specific models who do very specific things. However, the danger is how we use those models. And for us, and in the crypto space, I would say mostly the risk is to delegate KYC decisions to AI, and as a result, ending up, excluding excluding minorities from access to crypto in a massive way, just because of the biases that may be ingrained in AI decision-making engines. So it's not really a new risk because it's not specifically related to generative AI. AI-based decision systems and fraud management systems have existed for quite a while now, but I think that's the main risk that I think is important to address.
Well, maybe building on that, actually, I think, so it's a tech, and actually the dangers come with how the technology is used. Very often, humans are at the core of the problem of how technology is used for good or for bad. But bouncing on your bias problem, I think one thing that I find worrying is also like who is actually coding, who is building, because no matter what, our biases are fed into that. And the other day, maybe some of you might have seen that on LinkedIn, there was like a post going around with imagining like car brands and imagining those car brands in animals and creating avatars for if they were an animal person, what would they look like? And all those images of like car brands were animals that were male. There was one that was actually a female. And in French, a car is une voiture, so it's feminine. But I think things like that actually, while we look at it and we might think like it's actually fine, what actually it says, to your point on actually disregarding minorities or actually excluding things, are because of biases that are intrinsically built into it. So I think the dangers are, but those dangers have been in technology forever. I think it's not having participation from like different minds and thoughts and all of that continues building things that are actually, can be appreciated and can actually be valuable to everybody. And then the other one is what I mentioned, which is like at the end of the day, it's technology. So it is what we will make of it, and they'll be used for good and they'll be used for bad.
Fun. I guess I will. I think the technical term is doomer, right? Great. Okay. So, yeah. Thank you. Everyone who's a doomer, raise your hand. That's good. That's fantastic. Anyone who's smiling, I know you're raising your hand in your mind. Ken, you said a great thing, which is this technology is much simpler, or something like that, than it feels, right? Or I don't know what word you used. But for me, the revelation is actually And it has shown that the human mind is much simpler than previously believed. So the fact that an LLM can generate language that feels real and that is good enough to get people to take action and think that it's better than another human being, you know, I think effectively passing the Turing test. What that says isn't that the math is magic, but it says that actually the problem of human speech was simple enough to solve with what is kind of a fancy linear regression in multidimensional space, right? So there's nothing special about language. There's nothing special about your creativity. There's nothing special about your ability to design systems. There's nothing special about your poetry or your art. All of that can be mapped into these mathematical algorithms, right, and recombined and created in new ways. And of course, sentience is another thing entirely, but rather the fact that a lot of what we do is reducible down into machine code, I think, to me, that's the unnerving thing. The second point is that, and even in the prior version of bots and all this stuff, people were already simple enough to be fooled en masse. So you're describing, you know, 40% of our volume, or you know, whatever it is trading bots. In high-frequency trading, 90% of orders are just like cloud noise, right? On the internet, 70% of website traffic is fake. It's bots trying to hit advertising numbers. On Twitter, we don't know how many people are real or not. Elon has never told us. You know, so if that's the world of simple deterministic automation, we're now at a place where anyone can wield an army of Turing machines at people who are already fooled by very simple, you know, Twitter-like bots. So for me, that's the danger, right? Not sentient machines, but the fact that we're going to be stuck in these algorithmic content rivers, like the news feed, like the TikTok feed, and we can't get out of those simpler ones. Once you wrap around the much more sophisticated one, it becomes really dangerous to, I would say, human dignity, just the ability to be a person with some sort of free will. And so I think for that, again, going back to those promises of Web3 technology, we kind of need to bring back the ability of a person to opt out from being driven by these machine systems.
Yeah, thank you for the insights. And when thinking about the title of this our session, A Match Made in Tech, so do you think that there's a real organic need for AI and blockchains really to intersect in the, I would say, near term? So I don't want to focus on the long term in this discussion, but so is this really a solution looking for a problem to solve, or is there something really important that can happen in the intersection right now and in the near term?
I'll do the brief answer again, which is, not again, I wasn't brief before, who am I kidding? So I think we're going to have machine productivity, and the value created by that needs to settle on open source, decentralized blockchains. And I think the architecture for AI is for it to be again, respectful of the human condition. It has to be open source, and it has to be decentralized, and it has to be global. And only Web3, in my mind, kind of fulfills the promise of those rails. Otherwise, we're going to veer into a dystopian direction.
Marieke.
Yeah, no, and I think it's exactly that, right? It's constant tension of open source or close, and I really like what you said, which is if we continue with AI the way it is, it's actually just pushing Web 2 even further into what we know is not good about it. So in a way, Web 3 is a perfect answer for that. Now, you know, as we've discussed here, there's a lot of ideas, and there's a lot of theses, and there's a lot of like MVP and small projects that are starting. But the proof will be in the pudding, as it said, right? For this to grow and to really, you know, showcase what is possible. But given the doomsday picture that you've painted, I really hope we can solve that. And you know, in blockchain, there's always like, well, what's the killer use cases? And maybe that is where this killer use cases is, right? And I mean, some of it might be actually FUD, or some of it might actually be just trend. But the number of venture capitals that are actually evolving or changing their thesis, the number of time, I think maybe biased again, but like over the last couple of weeks and months that we just hear about that, like where is it, where is it, where is it? I think given the number of minds that are going after cracking that problem, we'll probably see something quite soon.
Yeah, and also, I mean, at a practical level, if some of you are building startups, I would say, if there's something in your product that could be done faster and cheaper by an AI, you should do that now, because it's probably pointless to build something that is not future-proof and is not going to be able to compete with someone who does the same. So particularly right now, all VCs are obsessed with tooling, right? They don't invest in B2C these days, they invest in B2B services, SaaS, etc. And so in that area in particular, I think it's really helpful to consider how AI tools can enhance your productivity, and you should definitely have that as part of your investment pitch.
Thank you. And I don't think many people are surprised if I raise the topic of regulation also in this context. So anybody who has worked in the blockchain and crypto space know the ongoing, evolving discussions around regulatory impact and all that. But now, today, EU Parliament has voted to approve the text for the new Artificial Intelligence Act in European Union that will regulate the high-risk use cases for AI and how AI solutions are offered to the citizens of the EU, whether those companies are operating them within the EU or somewhere else globally. So the regulation, compliance aspects, intersection of blockchain and AI seems like it's the endless regulatory burden and also fluctuating situation for the companies to operate in this space. So how do you see the situation today?
Well, I was hoping that they would focus on AI and forget about us. That hasn't happened, as we could see last week. So look, I think, Frank, more seriously, I think in crypto it's important to do what's right, and ethics are extremely important to us. Making sure that we're transparent and fair with users. At the same time, let's be real, right? Regulations are about competing economic interests. When a regulation is built, you have various people who have an interest in a regulation being issued that pay people to lobby for their interests. And so, as part of any ecosystem, if you're trying to innovate and bring about new technology, you need to be present in that fight and try to influence regulations with informed arguments as well. You can't ignore it, but you need to realize that you're going to be facing other interests who are trying to make sure that your product doesn't survive.
Maybe, well, I think ultimately, especially what we've been discussing here, is that both seeing AI and blockchain are and will be intrinsically linked. And so I think right now we look at, there is regulation for just AI and regulation just for, crypto blockchain. But, all of the things that are being discussed are like just tech that is extremely powerful. And at the end of the day, regulation is about protecting users and businesses. And I think there's probably a place where both will become combined. And so, for example, not to name, but in certain countries where, the approach is going to be, well, crypto out and AI yes, I'm not sure how that's going to work, because you might actually need one to help sort the exact regulation that you want to help for AI. So if we talk about authentication, and is the content that's being generated true, or if we talk actually about is this using Picasso or whatever, and therefore IP and where are rights, you might actually need traceability and therefore blockchain for that. So I think the two might be more linked than we think, and today they are still very disentangled.
Thank you. And Lex, briefly.
We missed a pun a long time ago when you said killer use case for AI. I really enjoyed that. Really, really. Yes?
Yeah.
Yes, okay. I think regulation is around, in addition to the market for power, it's also about underlying principles and governance, and I think that's another place maybe where some of the lessons from the Web3 space can come out, where maybe the DAO space can lead on sensible regulation of AI models, right? So if you have DAOs, trying to intermediate some sort of service or infrastructure for GPU or minting NFTs or something, maybe some of those protections can be built faster by the Web3 community. But I think, honestly, it's going to take decades to get anywhere that feels like settled law.
All right. Thank you, everyone. I think it's time for us to wrap up. Time is up. So thank you to all the panelists. And if anyone wants to have further discussions with us, we are going to be behind the screen here for a while. And
on Twitter, yeah. I think if you want to talk to us, just Twitter. Twitter is good.
All right.
Thank you, Teemu.
Yeah, thank you, guys.